my children and grandchildren.
Is that the darker?
Yeah, can we do that?
No.
I can have the laptop.
There is more light.
Yeah, we can do that. Can we do that?
It's very pleasant for Toby.
Does that work?
That's
Do you mind,
perfect.
Here, is it okay now?
I will move.
Is it
Great.
in your eye?
There we go. Thank you.
It's only that I don't see the people, and I like to see.
Do you
This
want?
camera is doing quite well. Before it wasn't good enough for this camera. So this camera was good enough to put it on for the online video.
Online is okay.
She was just saying it's too dark for her.
How much time we have?
All the time you need. All the time. Whatever.
What?
3 hours, 4 hours?
No. No, we were thinking about 1 hour, 1.5 hours, but you can also.
Won't the projector light up his face?
Sorry?
The projector?
Yeah.
Will light up Toby's face?
Well, this can, but it's a bit not pleasant, no, if I do
No, I
that.
don't mean that, the projector.
The projector,
Oh, we can do the projector. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, because this lamp is heating up the face probably.
the projector.
Oh,
The projector is even more unpleasant.
who is that? That's kind of creepy.
Anything, because it's a backlight. You
I know.
can see in front.
Hmm?
You cannot see the face when you have it in the backlight. That's right. If 3-4 of us will do that, it might be okay. Do you want to try?
If I hold anything?
With the light there, you can see the face.
Yeah,
You're nursing the laptop.
good laptop.
So I thought we were gonna put on
You don't see
the
your
video.
This is it, Johnny. This is the live.
Just put this lamp.
Michael is filming over there, and then this is the live stream, I think.
Yeah, this is actually better. It's very beautiful.
Wait, so like anybody who wants is actually like watching.
But you can't see anything, Toby. Can you?
I don't.
No,
I
it's
see
too
you, but I
blurry.
can't anymore.
Even we can.
Like in
So if
theater
this
also.
is better for you, then I prefer.
Maybe some more people can move in.
Yeah, people can move forward.
It's a bit too much.
Gonna give you a headache.
Is it good? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely warming.
Yeah. We keep that light like this.
Oh, you want me to take it off?
Turn it up a little. Turn it up a little, like too much in the eye.
Just aim it over there.
Not disturb. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, that's fine.
That is better for me, but worse for you.
No,
That's
it's
good.
fine.
That's good. We just had Serena and Nikki and.
Yeah, mine is good.
Okay.
No, it's good on the
The only problem is I don't.
Yeah, yeah.
laptop.
Five, 4, 3.
It's been on for 3 minutes. I think everyone can see all this discussion.
Shall we start?
Yeah, I think we can start.
Okay, friends. My name is Toby Newman. I'm from the Netherlands, and Netherlands has something with water. Especially when you take all the dikes away in the Netherlands, then 70% of the country is below sea level, so it will be sea. And a lot of people don't believe it, but I remember when I drove other people through the country, because we have marks in the country, and then you look at that mark like 4 meter high, 5 meter high, you say, look, if the dike is not there, that's the water level there. That's the water level.
That's sea level.
And it is 70% of the country which is more or less like this. So there is from childhood onwards You have to learn to swim before you have to go to school. You have to learn all kinds of water-related things before you come into something what is a school or university or whatever. My background is not so much in water. You will be surprised. I have a financial background. And I studied economics, and then I did all kinds of jobs in financial institutions, insurance, banking, and all that kind of thing. And I remember I got once a telephone call from a relation friend, and he said, there are 3 water companies, and they want to have a merger, and they don't know how to do it. So I was flown in, and to make a long story short, it took me 3 years to get that merger with the 3 water companies done, because that was my specialism, doing merger. But in the meantime, I love water-related topics. Suddenly I thought, hey, this is my home. This is what I like. This is fantastic. And so I started to study, and then I became chief executive of a company. But before that, Netherlands, typical Netherlands, you have to go to the university and you have to get those water degrees first, and then you are allowed to come in management of water. I mean, it is quite regulated before you step in. So this is a bit my background. In 2006, a long history with Auroville that started in 1961, 72 something. When I came for the first time in Auroville, and I started to understand what Auroville and Ashram, actually more than Ashram, what it was. And after quite a few years, 2006, I decided to come to Auroville. I mean, if you are already warmed up in 71 and you need to have a period all the way to 2006, and I mean, a family, a house, a career, and all that kind of thing. And there was somehow an end. And in the last 2 years, I started to know water harvest. I started to know quite a few players in the water field in Auroville. And from the company where I was executive, I could start funding them. So I had a good relation with Jill, who got money. I had a good relation with quite a few people where I could direct money to for water and water-related topics. So that's a bit how things went in the beginning. What I like, by the way, is that you interrupt me. That means that if there is something you don't understand or something you say, look, I really have that, I want to know something about this, then please interrupt me, because that is just better if you have to wait till the end, and don't do this. Let's be a bit. Here in Auroville, I'm busy actually with 3 kinds of water projects. The first one is I'm still part of the Varuna family, not so connected as in the past. And there is that project of the desalination. What is the topic for tonight? That is quite a project. It is a project that has not finished yet, but here and there it is already in execution. And we think, as Varuna, that it is an important thing for Auroville to get into the desalination. On how it connects with others. The second thing where I'm very busy with, and actually that is my main work, half a year ago, no, 9 months ago, I was asked, can you join the Town Development Council again? And I said, for 6 months or 7 months, that is fine, a new team, and I need a bit of help. I did it already for 10 years, so a bit of help. And of course, water came back on the table there. I did it in the past, and now it is fully back. This that means wastewater, it means water supply, it means the whole environmental water. All these kind of studies are now somewhere in the TDC and need to get forward. And to get forward at the moment is that we're making a complete plan of Auroville at the moment. That's called the DDP, the Detailed Development Plan, that is needed in the land acquisition. And we say, look, we have quite a few lands what we still need, but we have to know what we do with the lands. Otherwise, you can ask for it. So what are your plans for the land? So that is a process where we at the moment are in, that we're making a DDP. And a part of the DDP are all the water plans. That's the whole water supply, that is the whole wastewater, that's the whole environmental water system. Those things are falling into place because we have loads of studies. I mean, if you see how many studies of water there are in Auroville. It is unbelievable. It was 70 or 80 and then not studies one, I think, or it can be like, really people who worked on it for a year and then did all kind of measurements and then came with their things. Yes.
Are they collated in any place?
Are
All
they?
these studies, are they in one place?
They are all in our offices on the. That's what you asked.
In
Yeah,
the
they are free. Everybody who comes can get them.
Okay.
I mean, we have cataloged them because when we made that DDP, that detailed development plan, we wanted to make a catalog of all the studies which have been made in the last 20 years. So that we did. And water was an important part of this. So at least it is cataloged at the moment. And other studies are there in hardcover or in softcover on the discs, but it's all there. And it is for everybody free to access them. I mean, be my guest and look. It is some studies is 1 or 2 pages, but if I see the studies of Gilles Boulico about surface water, it's a brilliant study. If I see, I mean, there are quite a few really important studies that actually everybody who wants to make a step in water should look at. And so that is a work that I'm busy with to see of all those studies, making soup of it, and then making them systematic. And I say, well, this is the direction for water supply, this is the direction for wastewater, this is the direction for environmental water, and that we gradually start to look at what kind of projects are falling into. In that sense, we look at all the water players in Auroville. From the Citizens Assembly to CSR, from who know water service to everybody who has something to say, we're looking at what are they doing. And actually, we are very happy what Citizens Assembly did here, because water was quite polarized in Auroville, in the sense how to approach it and what to do, and they have managed to bring all those polarities together and come to a certain program. They say, now we all understand for what is the way forward. If you want, I can tell you the whole content of it, but this is the TDC. The third thing I'm busy with, but that's a bit personal, and I'm doing that alone, is atmospheric water generation. I mean, it is not so new is the technology, not, but it is getting in a breakthrough. It is like desalination was 25 years ago, that there was one plant somewhere in South America, and everybody was looking, is it working? And when you drank it was still salt, and it costed a lot of money, and blah, 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 blah. Well, and gradually it became better. Gradually it became more mature. Gradually it became more manageable, this kind of technology. And there is one thing what I already say now, and that will come later back, is that when you work in the water supply, so giving water, and especially drinking water, you need to have proven technology. You don't want to distribute water to people where every 5 minutes something is wrong, or, I mean, you need proven technology. And before a technology is completely settled and looked at all the aspects, that takes years. It really takes years. You have to test it in different environments, you have to test it in different situations, you have to test it in different capacities, and then you start understanding how the technology works. But the technology where I'm personally working with, and I hope next year that I have the first thing in Auroville, that from the air, and see here the air at the moment, I mean, it has an 85% humidity. And if you have a device that can pull the water out of the air and make that water or even drinking water from, I mean, you can be very decentralized, and there is more than enough. And the only problem at this moment is that it's relatively expensive. But there are already plants on this planet which provide cities. I mean, it is on that level already, that technology. So, one, I'm doing the desalination with Varuna. Second, I'm in the TDC, taking care of the water policies and project there. And three, but that is personal, I'm doing something in the atmospheric water generation. So if you want to know one of these things, then just tell me, and then I go into that route. Yeah. Please be loud. My hearing is not so good.
I didn't even say anything. So about the policy part.
Yeah.
There was this issue where, like, I just heard, Aurora, who lives in Samasti.
Yeah.
Right. She was pressing her issue, where she wasn't granted water from the main source because from transition or something.
Yeah.
Transition didn't want to share water with her.
Yeah.
And like she was just basically denied water, and she has to now think about, putting up a motor in her place, or, issues like that. It feels like there's some kind of dominance, or politics, right?
Yeah.
Water politics. Like,
Yeah.
so do you work on that?
Yes.
Those as well?
I a little bit. I zoom out a little bit on what is the problem here. I don't know this specific case, but we get quite a few of those cases, and especially in farms. It is much more than with individuals and the residents. Look, in Auroville, what happened here? People came, make their communities, dug a borewell, and then it was all on a very low scale. And then they had a water tank, and the water tank was high or low or whatever. And that some pipes went out, and the pipes went to houses, 2, 3, 4, 5 houses. So it was a simple borewell, a simple pump of the thing that went into the overhead tank, and that went to that's a very small system. Actually, we don't even call a system in water supply, but it is a very small thing. That happened everywhere. So we have at this very moment in Auroville about 120 borewells for 3,500 people, and of course including guests, including visitors, including workers, including there's much more. But basically, you look at the residents for 3,500 people, we have 120 borewells. I remember my situation in the Netherlands. I had there 50 borewells, so less than half here, and there are 3 million people were drinking from it. 3 million. So you see a bit the scale difference. So we are very low scale. The second thing what happened is that people used it for themselves because the capacity was not so big. If you want to invest in a borewell, you have to make this, you have to make a pump, you have to make, and people don't have lakhs and lakhs and lakhs to make it in really the standard and the capacity what you normally should expect. So people also saved money on it. The borewells are relatively small. The pumps are relatively small. The overhead tanks are relatively small. So they kept it for themselves. Understandingly, more and more communities came. Here and there connection. Here and there agreements came from can I have your water? Yeah, you can have. And things like this happens. And some systems were connected. Basically, it is the old way of having 150 borewells or 120 borewells with a tower and then with some pipes. Now, what is now back to your problem? If your neighboring community or your neighboring residents want some water, you start talking with each other. And then the whole thing comes from, is there sufficient capacity, or do we need it also for our garden? Do we need it for our animals? Do we need, and it is quickly that the capacity is on its limits. And that's where people usually say, well, please make it for yourself. In this case, because it is connected to transition has an enormous capacity. It is quite a deep borewell. It goes almost to 300 feet, and that is one of the 4 borewells in Auroville which are so deep. You can say something about the quality of the water, but the capacity is really generous. It's really big. I think, and now I come to the policy question on this, we should gradually get away from the personal way of looking at borewells. I think, after the calculations, that from the 120 borewells, if we have 40 well maintained, that it is sufficient for this moment for whole Auroville. I give you an example what parts of the calculations are, and then I come to the policy. We have used pipes in Auroville, which is mainly PVC pipes. Usually, in the way as they have been laid in the ground, they start leaking after 5-6 years. We have calculated about 30 to 35% of the total water what is pumped. 30 to 35% of the water what is pumped is lost. So what about save? What about drinking a glass less? What about giving less to the garden? We just have to change the pipe. If you see what water service has done, he has taken all the PVCs out and they have put highly definition polyethylene pipes in the ground. And with electrofusion, that does not leak. So the leakage there is only when an excavator starts digging somewhere for road service and they touch a pipe. That's the only losses they have. And for the rest, it is 1 or 2% what happens at meters. So this is an important point, that we don't only look at depersonalizing the borewells. I think with 40 we have enough. And secondly, that we start renewing and connecting all those pipes. Because there is, in this, if you save 30% of your water, I mean, you can grow with 30% in people in Auroville. Now, here is where our policy comes in. That we said in the supply part, is this what we want to pursue? We want to take the borewells and not grab the borewells and say they are ours. We have to talk to the people. Are you willing that we connect it to the main system? We will take care of the main system. And this is how things are growing. This is one of the policy, but there are many more. There are many more policies. If you look at the water supply policy in general, that starts always with the water quality. You think that the water quality is okay in Auroville. In most cases, it is okay. But there are two things. One, it differs really from where you are in Auroville. And second, I told you about the pipes which are leaking. It is not only that the water goes out, but when you have a rainy season, also water goes in. And we have built the wastewater treatment plants here and there a little bit too close to borewells and pipes. So that goes also in. We don't have here a mass of people who go to hospitals, but there are cases in Auroville where the E. coli are too high, where the viruses are too high, and just on a quality perspective that we don't even match here and there with some the basic Indian standards, we need a lot to be done. And that is quality of the material what you use. You need a good pump, you need pipes which don't leak, you need an overhead tank which is sealed, you need the distribution which is, all that kind of things have to come in place. And that costs a lot of money. I mean, it is not that you do that in a year or 2 years, that is just every year you keep investing every year, and after 10 or 15 years you think, now we have done half Auroville, or now we have done, I mean, this is how it works. That's only the quality. The second point, which is much more important, is we call that delivery assurance. And that is a political thing. I think that everybody should have access 24 hours, 7 days a week, water. That is not a vision in Auroville. If I go to some system, look, there are a few big systems in Auroville. One, we have the water service system. Second is in Auroville, the system that Dirk has built. Then we have the system what Bobby has made, the sinus borewell, that is now integrated with water service. And basically we have ALOC system, that's also quite a big. And for the rest, it is quite individual, except for Michael Tate, who has quite a few clients or connections. Now, if I look at ALOC, he says, I fill the tanks, and then I do that once a week, and if there's water or not, fine. You hear? Not 24/7. If I hear Dirk, he says something else. If I mean, everybody has his own view of how to distribute the capacity of the water, which is not bad, but there is not, that means that in some parts of Auroville, the quality of the water is better. In some parts of Auroville, the delivery assurance is better. In some parts, I mean, I can go on like this. It is not that is everywhere the same. And I don't think that is good. And if you are in Auroville, where income are really different, I mean, it is a topic where we don't talk so much in Auroville, that there are people who have money and there are people who have not so much money. And if you make the amount of money what you have, and you can invest in water, it means that the access to water is different for different groups in Auroville. It is not so bad that people are excluded, but there is a difference in access of prime services of people in Auroville. And I think we should not do this. We should make one of different system, but at least in the same terms and conditions, same quality, same delivery assurance. That's the delivery. Then we come to the third one, cost of water. The cost of water is very different where you are in Auroville. There are places where there's only a few rupees, and there are places where there's more than 100 rupees. So there are big differences. And that has everything to do with how the investment, how much water is distributed, how much, I mean, you can go on like this. I don't think it is okay that somebody pays 5 rupees and somebody pays 100 rupees. I don't think that's okay. But it is something that has to be developed in Auroville, that we all think it is not okay, and then that we can take the next step on how do we solve it. Last thing in the whole, and there are many more things, but I started on the quality, and then the delivery assurance, and then the cost of it. The last thing is the environmental effects of your water system. That is also very different. Luckily, we don't treat water so much in Auroville. We do it in the wastewater, we do it in other places, but not in water supply. As soon as you start treating water, and that will be my point here in the desalination, you have an environmental effect. And in some cases, not so minor. So you have to deal with it. And that dealing with it, that is a balance between how much water do you need and how much can you treat it, and what do you do with the effluents. Actually, in desalination, it is quite simple. You can make salt of it. There's nobody, by the way, doing it, but you can do. And we already find people who are willing to do it in our case, but it is not so quickly done. So those 4 things, quality of the water, delivery assurance, cost of the water, and the environmental effect, those 4 things, you look at it systematically when you want to build a water system for Auroville. And that is not only for water supply, it is also for wastewater, because you can have exactly the same questions. What is the quality of the effluent? How much is the cost for the distribution? Is there an effect on the environment? You can have exactly the same questions for water, for the wastewater.
I have a question.
Yeah, okay.
You were
Is
saying,
your question answered, or it took a bit long, or I got lost somewhere?
No, sorry.
Okay, fine.
you were saying that there are 50 borewells for 3 million people in Netherlands.
Yeah.
But are they so dependent on agriculture as their main source of income? Because in Auroville, I think a major part of water usage and pumping water out of the borewells goes to agriculture, and that's why maybe there are 120 borewells for 3,000.
Yeah, you have
Plus,
the point.
there are volunteers also who are coming in and tourists,
around.
like probably like
Yeah, you have a
10,000,
point here.
20,000 people.
Yeah, you have a point here that in the 120 are also the agricultural boreholes.
Yeah.
And basically, it's a different. Although what I see in the farms, that they also use quite a lot of rainwater. But that is only in a certain month a year, and it is not the whole year. If I go to Annapurna farm or Puyaspati or whatever, they have huge borewells. That takes about half of the total water what is produced in Auroville. And the other half is for the city. It is a little bit different, it's 40-60, but let's say half. So here you have an important point. The borewells, what I say, the 49 in the Netherlands, is also for farms. Because farms are not allowed, you will be surprised, taking water out of the lakes and things. That is, you have no idea how the water levels in the whole country are regulated. You are not allowed without permission to put anything in. You are not allowed to take anything out without permissions, because it might affect the level of the water. And in times when it is very wet or very dry, it is very strict regulated. So they are connected to borewells. Not everywhere, but most of the farms are connected to borewells. But they get special tariffs, and they get special pressure, and they get special whatever. But that's a situation we don't have here. But your point is correct, that in the 120 borewells, half of it are farm borewells. But also farms in Auroville are not on a level of that they take millions of cubes. I mean, it is still very moderate what's happening here.
Also, the temperature is different, no?
Sorry, a little louder.
Also, the temperature, I mean, because it is a close to equator.
Yes.
The Netherlands is a bit, cold.
Absolutely. Yes.
So, water evaporates faster
Yeah.
than
Yeah, 6 millimeters per day, but what we do here, yeah, that is quite a lot. That's quite a lot. Okay, I go back to
Toby,
the
one
desalination.
little question from way back. The new piping that you're talking about, what's the life on that? I mean,
100
it's
years
still
easy.
PVC, huh?
100 years easy.
100 years,
Yeah.
really? Oh.
We write them off at 80 years, and knowing that they basically have a double lifetime. You will never.
Amazing, what a change.
There was
I tell you, actually, I wanted to do that in the desal talk. We started with making a pipeline from the coast to Auroville. And that was actually quite a thing. Because when you are on the coast, then there is a burial place from where the plant was. Then you have the ECR. Then you have residents, quite a few residents on the other side of the road, on this side of the road. And then you go up even. And I mean, it is quite something. So if you want to make a trench, now we're coming to the technology, if you want to do trenching, and you want to put a pipe, which takes 500 million liters a day, I mean, we're talking about quite a pipe that is, and you want to put it deep, but you don't want that people start drilling in it and taking water off. Yeah, no, I had a project in Kotakarai where I think we saw more than 200 drillings in the pipe. And so we changed the main supply pipe to a new one, and this was the distribution pipe to everybody. I mean, it's a different world here. It's a bit, it's a different world. So we didn't want that people start drilling. And I mean, if you pump water from the coast to here, I didn't mention this topic, but pressure is an important element in water supply. And you talk in bars. And when you go over the 3-4 bar, you come to 8 or 10 bars, I mean, if the water comes out of the pipe and it hits you, you're dead. I mean, don't underestimate. I once saw an accident with a pipe in a corner where they put too much pressure on it. And even the pipes which are so thick broke and came out of the ground, and we have a fountain of 30 meters. I mean, don't underestimate how heavy and how dangerous water can be when it has a high speed. I mean, it is really something. And water doesn't like to be transported. I mean, heavy in the pipe, and you need a lot of energy to get it through, and it doesn't get better. But okay, so we wanted to make a trench from the coast all the way to that school. What's the name of the school there? An Auroville school.
No, opposite Mango Hill. What is it?
Oh, yeah. There's an Auroville school there.
University.
Auroville Village School.
Yeah. And they gave us permission that we could bring the pipes there. And that was
What's the diameter of the pipe?
sorry.
What diameter of the pipe?
The diameter of the
Diameter is about 50 centimeter. 50. Yeah, we wanted to do 2. I'll tell you later why. So we wanted to do 2. And we understood already, because I was talking 2 years with the highway department to get it under the road. I mean, you have the ECR. And they were reluctant. They said every time use the ducts, because every road, and especially a highway or an ECR, has every 50 meter and sometimes 100 meter a duct under. It all looks like a tunnel for usage. But the problem is that you have to have bend 1 and then bend 2 and then bend 3 and then bend 4, and every bend you lose pressure and you need more pumping power. So we were not so, we didn't like to go through the ducts. And also then it is visible. That's a water pipe, that's the Varuna water pipe. And I mean, you see them already drilling and getting, I mean, it has to be protected. So what we did, we invited companies, said, can you do drilling? It's called horizontal drilling. And they come with machines as big as this room, and they start drilling, and then they go to 7, 8, 9 meters deep, and then that pipe follows its way where that drill is going. And that can go to a maximum of about 30 kilometers. You hear what I'm saying? That is here, and that is Cuddalore, from here to Cuddalore. If you start drilling here, then you come out to Cuddalore. We needed only 1 kilometer, by the way, but this is the technology which is there, which is completely here in India. I mean, it's here. So we invited that company, and they started drilling. Then it came out of the school, 9 meters deep. Nobody will ever see those pipes back again. In Mumbai, they don't do different anymore. I mean, they cannot make trenches. It is too crowded, and too cramped, and too dense, everything. So they go deep under and want to come out. It is the only way to do it. So the pipes, when they're in the ground, you forget them. You know that they are there. They're protected like anything. They stay there for 120 years. Over. Discussion over. I mean, it is fantastic. It's only trenching costs 100 rupees. that costs 2,000 rupees per meter. I mean, it makes a big difference for what you do. But this is for once and for all, and that you have to see how long it is. I mean, we are now planning the way from Mango Hill all the way up to the college, the Mansai College. That's also quite, and I mean, there are voices which still say do it trenching, and there are voices now, you know how easy it was with the remote drilling and how deep. But okay, I go back to desalination. The water situation in Auroville is from a supply point of view quite dangerous. We have overused the aquifers, which was actually only source for drinking water, not for agriculture, drinking water, too much. You see in the statistics, and where we have bore wells which are monitoring, you see it going down with meters a year. And actually, we don't know where it stops. Some say it will be in 4 years, some say it will 6 years, some will 7 years. No, but it is an ending game. Not everywhere. Some parts are filling quite quickly up with rain. So it is quite an image what you can make of a whole Auroville. And now here it is a bit more, there a bit less. But see that the two big aquifers what we have, actually we have 7 aquifers, but 2 big aquifers what we have, they are getting down, but they are so big that the Auroville surface is only 1% of the total aquifer. And there are the 120 bore wells in. And the 5,000 other bore wells, mainly agricultural bore wells, are all around us. And this causes the enormous extraction. And we all know that when you cycle a bit around or you walk a bit around, that without switches, this water comes out 24 hours, or that there is flood irrigation, or, I mean, if you see the amount of water what is used, especially for agriculture, then I'm still wondering that there is water in the ground. It goes out with a speed and with a volume. It's amazing. Luckily, we have a lot of rainfall. But if you have 2 or 3 years less rainfall, then you see immediately in the first aquifers already the problems. So it is going down. And everybody has the same opinion, more or less, that one day the water will not come from rain, from the area to higher areas, but will come from the sea as saline water into the aquifers. And on the coast, we see already a strip of a few hundred meters, and we see that in the quality of the boreholes, where that seawater is coming in. I mean, you don't have to study to see it. I mean, you taste the water, it is salt, and then you go after the ECR, you taste the water, but it is salt. I mean, it's coming in and coming in and coming in and coming in. So the situation, especially in the situation where we are in Auroville, we want to grow. We want to go to 50,000 people. The villages around, they're growing like anything. So the stress on water is getting more and more and more. And this is not only what happens here in Auroville, in our environment, but it is a situation that we have in all India. It is everywhere where we see more or less the same thing. So let's concentrate here. There are a few ways, yeah.
Anyone studied land subsistence?
The what then?
Subsiding of the land?
Yeah.
Any studies on that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
As the aquifer.
Yeah.
So what is any measurement?
I don't know the thing by heart. I know it's a study, and I know it was also quite alarming in the levels.
There is part of the Mela, we can explain that to you.
Oh,
In the Mela, we have a map of the aquifers and the.
yeah, they can see. Yeah. But you want to know the depth of the aquifers?
No, I know you studied the falling depth
Yeah.
of the aquifer. I'm saying if you studied any falling of the land.
The land contracts. Yeah, I know that has been studied, but I don't know the values. That I don't know.
Okay. That's
Okay. Yeah. So the situation needs another approach. And of course, we should be more careful with water, but if from the 1% what we use, we get 10% off, that means of the 99% what other uses, I mean, nothing happens. So we are trapped here. I mean, we are literally trapped. I mean, if there nothing happens with the agricultural use of water in our environment, that will affect our water supply. I'm not going further into the policies of making bore wells because that is done by the water group. They have their own view of how that should be. It's not completely the TDC view, but let's park that one. So we need other sources to deal with this. And that was already, let's say 10 years ago, that people about water sat together, said, how do we solve this problem on the long run? Yeah, we need more sources. And that was called multi-sourcing. So we need to develop rainwater much more. We need to develop desalinated water. We need to develop, and perhaps we should also look at the demand, agriculture, supply, rainwater only. City, high quality demand, perhaps desalinated water only, that you make supply and demand, that you connect them better, because now all the water is used for everything. So that gradually came into the Varuna courtyard. But there was something else in Varuna. In Varuna was a strong feeling, and especially by one of the Varuna, to start making the lake, the WaterMattersMela lake. So that WaterMattersMela lake is already on the table since 1968. I mean, if you look at the Galaxy plan, I'm not talking about the master plan, I'm talking about the first plan that was made to make something of an urban design of Auroville, which was made in the 60s, where it is already seen that there is a lake. So it is a part of the Galaxy elements, like WaterMattersMela gardens, lake, crown, line of forces, zones. I mean, then you have all the Galaxy elements together. That's not say exactly about how the things are connected and where they come. These are the Galaxy elements. So the lake was a part of it. And that guy, Michael Bonke, wanted to realize that lake. And he made study after study after study after study after study. And when he started studying, other people also start studying. Boulipo started studying it. And Guigon started studying it. And there were many more. Kraft started studying it much before. So that concept of the lake is already on the table for more than 40 years. But never with what kind of water functionality does that lake has. Is it just beauty and you put water in it, or is it a part of the whole water system? That you fill it with rainwater and you take it out and you make drinking water out of it. And I mean, there are all kinds of ideas about what to do with the lake. And don't underestimate what the first phase of the lake is now under construction. That is 1/12, and that is already 100 by 100 meter and 10 meter deep. And that means that if you have 12 of those, that you talk about a gigantic amount of water what will be stored there. It is 164,000 about 80,000 cubic meter what will be stored there. That is huge. So just to have it as beauty is perhaps a bit too much. Perhaps we make a reserve there, that we say, we know a big reserve tank, we can fill it with rainwater, and that has all been studied on how to fill it with rainwater, and then we can use it as a part of the supply. Because we have a lot of gardens and we have a lot of other things. Now we make a step further, and then come back to the desalination. Wastewater is in Auroville not so well treated. It went actually in the same line as the borewells, individual pits, and I mean, keep it relatively small, which is completely understandable, and I mean, there is also not another way to do it. But when the city grows, and the city is growing, then things are coming together. Small things add on. And there is a reaction between all those things, and now more professional management. What are we going to do with that wastewater? So that wastewater becomes a strategic resource. It is not only that we want to get rid of it, but we want to treat it and make it back into the gardens, because every liter what is used of wastewater in the gardens will reduce the amount of water what we pump out of the aquifers. That is that project what is now there on the Vigas, where all those people are connected to a central wastewater system, and that water is, as grey water, goes back to all the gardens. So there's also a resource. So we have rainwater as resource, we have treated wastewater as resource, and this is actually the most strategic one. The more we do there, the better it is. And from all the water projects, this is the one which is really important. And we have the desalination. And then a few other things. What I just say that you personally can be busy with air water or no. Desalinated water started about 10 years ago. It was in Verona, we wanted a lake and we wanted to do the whole Auroville for giving water. So we started this project. We did a lot of research in what is the demand, what kind of plant should it be, where should the plant be located, what kind of permissions do we need, all that kind of thing. We visited 4 or 5 other plants here in the coast of Auroville just to get a bit of an idea what is needed to make it. That became report after report. First, we made a report and say, if we want to have something like a desalination plant, it should look like this. And this means 5 million liters a day. Auroville uses at the moment 1 million liters. Well, we want to start with 1 liter, 1 million liters, and gradually have more capacity to the 5. We wanted to start a little bit of access that we can also start filling the lake a bit. But not, we could not say it too loud, but it wasn't part of the idea. So that was the first report. The second report was an environmental impact study. I mean, when you make desalinated water and you want to have the permission to build a factory like this, and don't think that it's a factory like this. I mean, you see here this white wall, the desalination plant is not much bigger than this. I mean, if you go to the big plants there in Chennai, the 600 plants, I mean, and we make one plant for 1 million, and that is 600. It has no comparison with each other. I mean, it's a completely different world in it. So we made an environmental impact study where we showed if you have desalination, how much brine comes out. And brine has to go back to the sea. What effect does it have on the fishes? What effect does it have on all that kind of reports like this? Went through all the study. What came out of it is because the plant is so small, and the treatment is quite a high technology that it had hardly environmental impact. We were quite happy with it. That was an important point. Next point is, are you allowed to do activities like this so close on the coast? That is a research of a year to find out all the legal details and all kind of lawyers that has to have to go to Anna University, remote sensing, with all kind of surveys to see if the plant can be just there. We bought the land there in front of the coast near what was it? Not Slima. No, near Ripo. Yeah, near Ripo. And then the last 2 years, the sea came closer, and now we are defending it with all kinds of walls and things. So that was the next thing, that whole legal stuff. Then it has to go to Vilipuram for approval. Then it has to go to Chennai for approval. Then it has to go to Delhi for approval. Then it has, I mean, before this, it is a 10-year affair. Before you have done all the studies, and every time when we talked with somebody who was on a political level or administrative level, said, look, we are talking about drinking water. You cannot have all these kind of conditions where you see it is okay, and then drag on for so long for one of the most, after air, water is the most important thing what there is. So this is the phase where we are. In the meantime, we are selecting what kind of technology. And that is actually an interesting point, because I remember when I saw for the first time, it's about 20 years ago, a desalination kind of thing, the amount of power what it needs, the amount of throughput of water what it needs. It was inefficient and very expensive. At that moment, if you compare prices, 1 cubic that is 1,000 liters was about €5. Now it is less than half €1. And it is pure that the amount of power what you need to get that desalinated water into drinking water has been so efficient, because you have very high pressure that is pushing the water through the membranes, then basically you lose the power. The invention in the last 10 years is that you keep that amount of pressure the same, but you can use over and over and over again. So the technology is really improving. In the meantime, other technologies come up. Our technology, the membrane technology, is taking the salt out. But you have also technologies that can separate the water from the salt much easier. That is still in development. It is not proof technology, but especially in India, the technology of making drinking water out of desalinated water is improving very fast. So this is at the same time that we say, okay, this is our default membranes. We're looking at other technology, and by the time we get all the permission and we can start building, then perhaps we can start experimenting with this because it is promising. But in the meantime, we are making and dragging the pipes all over here, which is a project in itself. The whole project is now in a stage that for the plant itself, we are still in the middle of the permissions. Basically, we can start building tomorrow because we know exactly what where comes. The drawings are ready and what kind of technology. There's already pipes coming in the ground. The next phase is already coming from Mango Hill all the way to here. So that starts to get real, but it will take a few years before it's all settled.
The permissions.
Yeah, the permissions but also the money. We talk about 600, quite a lot of money.
Hi. So you were talking about one of the byproducts of the desalination plant is brine,
Brine, yeah.
which goes back into the sea, and that's toxic, maybe toxic for the fish. So does brine basically consist of salt or sodium chloride? Can it be extracted and used for edible, consumable salt instead of going back into the sea where it can be toxic for the aquatic life? Can the brine be used as salt?
Yeah, that's possible, but it is not an easy thing. And the how to say this? We have not studied in depth, but we have already people who ask, what are you going to do with the brine, or can I do something with the brine? First, you have to store it. The storage is huge, what you need for the brine. And the traditional way is that you have quite large ponds and that the water evaporates. See, if you have 100 liters of water coming in the desalination plant, you cut at 40. 40 is drinking water and 60 is brine. So it is a lot of water goes back into the sea. That is, some people think after 2 or 3, no, from 100, 60% goes back. And the 40% is usable. And the 40%, it is not ready yet when it comes to the membranes. You have to treat it. It has to be mineralized. It has to be, I mean, there are a few stages, but you still need to make in the end thing when you taste it, this is okay. No, it is not that simple when you separate the two, that everything, the 60%, in our case it is not so much, but when you have every day a huge amount of brine, I mean, that fills up easy rooms like this. And that amount of land we just don't have, and we don't have the money to buy 20 or 40 or 60 acres that it goes out and that it evaporates and that you can take a salt out. But it is possible. I've seen it in desalination plants where they did it, where they had a huge amount of area where they could do it. So it is possible. But in our project, it is not foreseen that we do it.
So when you put it back to the ocean, it doesn't imbalance or cause the fishes or the plants anyhow?
No. We have an issue with the fishermen, but that is not about the fish. It's we have actually the fishermen their problem is that we need 2 pipes in the water, and the coast goes quite. The slope is not very. It is very horizontal. I mean, it is, you need to go far in the sea before you have 10 meters or 15 meters. We need pipes about 600-700 meters into the sea. It's quite far. And that is costly. I mean, offshore work to have those pipes, and so we looked at all kinds of technologies with sinking and with concrete or underground. That we have not decided yet, but we need 2 pipes like this. One is the intake, that's called, and the other one, usually a few hundred meters away, is the outfall, is the brine. When we measured, when we calculated the brine of actually when the agency who did the environmental impact study calculated the levels of salt what you have directly around the pipe, that was hardly noticeable. It goes in the power of 3, it gets less. So that goes very quickly. I mean, you don't have too much. It really, it didn't go quite quickly. The problem with the fishermen was when they pull their nets over the bottom, that they get stuck into the pipes. That they didn't want. And we need an outfall where the boats were. That they didn't like. And there were a few of those issues. And those issues are not resolved yet. I mean, it is not that we're talking daily with them, but we talk now and then, let them well, look, what is now the problem? And of course, there is a money question, and of course, there are all kinds of questions. And one of the reasons why we are a bit stuck with our permissions is the discussion with the fishermen. Not because of the fish, but because they think that their nets will get entangled and that there are things like this.
But I mean, there are also corals on the bottom of the sea, right?
Look, I have all the arguments in place. And I don't think that now you have to put the camera out. I don't think that this is I don't think that this is the issue. I mean, the issue is somewhere else. And it starts with who and it ends with P. And I think it's this one.
So this is the pipes. There are pipes now laid from Auroville.
Yeah,
there are pipes
from the coast.
From the coast.
Yeah, to the school.
All the way to 9 meters deep, is it?
It is about 7 meters deep. Yeah.
7 meters. Two pipes.
Two pipes.
50 centimeters.
Yeah, 50 centimeter wide. Yeah.
And they're polypropylene. What are they made of?
That's what I said with high definition polyethylene. Yeah, parts like this, thick like this, you can shoot a gun, it will not
okay.
Yeah.
And so you've got to stop at some point, or you can't have one continuous pipe all the way.
Look, if we would have the money, then the preferred option that we would have drilled immediately all the way up to the center of Auroville.
Okay,
that's 5 kilometers.
And Michael Bonk is paying for this?
Yeah.
He did in the past, but.
It's come to a standstill though, has it, or what?
Yeah, look, the finance is always a point.
Only 1%.
I will tell us something else. Let's not look at Bonker too much. Look at the lake. Sorry.
How much does it cost? He asked.
No.
And you wanted to ask them.
She asked.
Yeah, okay. She asked about cost.
A few cores.
You mean the plant or the pipes or what do you talk about?
Both. What we did,
Yeah.
what we did was a bit more than 1 core in pipes. Just not the pipes itself, but the laying of the pipe and drilling.
With
That was about a kilometer.
it's 1 kilometer.
Yeah.
And where is the pipe supposed to go?
Sorry?
Where does it go?
Well, you know the former Halsikon, that place on the coast? Near.
No, where does it go in Auroville? It goes to the Matrimonia?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
It's there already?
Look, what needs to be done is that it gets connected to the main water distribution system. And at the moment, we have already half of the crown where is a similar pipe. So it will connect there. So that it connects directly to the water supply system in Auroville.
So both pipes are up to Matramandir, exit
No.
and entrance?
This is actually when I said 2 pipes, I knew already that I have to explain not only 1 pipe, but why there are 2 pipes.
Okay.
First, I want to answer another question about the lake. When you go and build a lake, like what now is foreseen, that you need about 3 to 4 years digging, plastering, making the walls, put the folies, filling. I mean, I say it a bit simple, but that before the lake is that segment, we call it test pond, is full, it takes about 3 to 4 years in caught rainwater. We can make the catchment much bigger. Really, we don't use at the moment 15% of the total catchment, but when we look outside the Matrimonia area, and then you look into the city area, then we can catch much more water, basically can go to the lake. But that's a study of Gilles Boulipo, so that's possible. The second thing is, if you go on that every 4 years you make a lake segment, and you have 12 lake segments, then you know how many years you need to make a whole lake. I mean, it is 4 years per segment, 12 segments, so 4 times 12, and then you know more or less how many years it takes. Now, we were busy with the new secretary who had all kinds of questions how long things are taking. And on the whole list was also a lake, and there was a number in years how much it took. She said, why does it take so long? You dig and you fill it. I mean, to have a simple approach that will actually not hurt somebody else. So you can increase the speed gigantically, but that means that you need the money to do it. And it is all private funded at the moment. I'm not saying that Michael Bonk is paying alone, and he has also donors around him which help him. Some help for the maintenance, some help for buying an excavator, some help for, I mean, there are all kinds of things where there's help, but he's not doing alone. But it is a private kind of funding. It is not that the government steps and you have 20 corners and then make the lake. I mean, it doesn't work like this. And that's also what WaterMattersMela doesn't want. Because the whole WaterMattersMela is made from donation. And this is how they want it, that it becomes anonymous and that nobody can claim it. And that, I mean, that kind of arguments are there. The same I can bring to some extent to the desalination plant. And you say, look, it is at the moment funded by one person who has also funders around him, but there is an end in it. If you have there a lake, and you have there, and you have a few other projects, then I mean, it is not a Jeff Boss who is here funding things. It is still individuals. That is one thing. One of the projects I have not mentioned, but is certainly there, and that has nothing to do with desalinated water, has nothing to do with it. It's about electricity. You know that Verona stepped in power supply for Auroville. I still say we bought windmills, and that generated electricity that was sold to the grid. The money came from that, and with that we subsidized the electricity bills in Auroville. There are more ways in generating electricity, and there is still an old idea pending, and it is already on the drawing table, that we have a hill somewhere uphill in the daytime with solar. We bring that water up, and in nighttime you bring all that water down again, and then it starts going to the turbines and gives power. That's where we need the second pipe for. Bring that water up somewhere, and that goes down. So that's why we need 2 pipes. But those pipes are not connected, they have completely different function, and I prefer to talk about the desalinated pipe only because for the desalination we need only 1 pipe. This is the story.
Yeah, sorry, you have a question? No.
Can you, one of the reasons, and you've used the word drinking water so many times.
Yeah.
And the history of water projects is for drinking water. The problem is that you connect it to water service, and drinking water is a very small fraction of that water service. People are using showers, flushing, all those other non-potable uses of water. And we are trying to purify water to a level of potability, but then 95% of the use is for all other things which doesn't need that level of purity.
Yeah.
So are we doing anything on the distribution side to say, okay, when we get potable water, every building should have, a pure drinking water supply, bathing and that quality water supply, laundry and whatever, and then a gray water supply, less thing for flushing and anything else. As part of the planning process, any new building should be equipped with that level of thing. I'm just asking, is that level of thinking and some planning, execution, or consideration?
It's in the thinking. It's not in the planning yet, but it has to go through a few stages before you can really say we're going to do it or not. That we all need high quality drinking water, okay, that's clear. But that is actually only needed for drinking and cooking and sometimes for washing. I mean, that's clear. To have a second system with less high quality water is very simple to think about, but it is difficult to do. And the distribution system in water is very expensive, especially when you use the pipes. So there you have reason why it is not always happening. I mean, you walk immediately to this problem, and another problem is you're looking here at somebody who has paid a very dear price on this. I was in the Netherlands responsible for the water supply for 1/3 of the country. We had all kinds of experiments that we say, look, this water is for internal use, and we have here less quality water, and we can use that for toilet, even clothes washing, gardening, car washing. I mean, there were a lot of things possible with that second quality of water. We realized immediately that the pipes needed to be different color. We realized immediately that the pipes needed different sizes. Otherwise, people mix them. And that happened. In the Netherlands, when I started, it was by law forbidden to have gray water and to use gray water. Then, fortunately, the government made an exception for certain experiments, just to see. So we started in a city which is called Utrecht. That's where we made a second system for less quality water. And then, of course, something happened. I mean, when you experiment, things happen. So they they made wrong connections on the pipe. So about 20,000 people got sick of using wrong water in brushing teeth and drinking. The government immediately intervened. I mean, it was a matter of hours, and they forbid everything. So just to tell you that it is not an easy race to walk, but it is possible. What we do in the TDC at the moment is that we say, look, we have concentrate now all the buildings on rainwater. There is still a lot to do. Not all buildings are rainwater proof in catchment. So in the permission conditions, we check if there are devices and that all the water which falls on the roof and where we are not, that is collected and used for gardening. So that is phase one. And if this is already there, then you will see that the water consumption in internal house will go down. The second thing I just studies at the moment, and you say, look, you can make a rainwater, you treat it, just a simple filter. I mean, it is actually too simple. You bring it only to the toilet, or you bring it only to an external tap where you wash. I say car, but that's a wrong example. You wash your cycle. I mean,
Your electric cycle.
Your electric cycle. Yeah. I mean, it is not so difficult to catch rainwater and to store it and to make some kind of a filter device which you can buy anywhere. And at least there is the pathogens are out, and that you can use it for whatever. This is starting now. It has not landed in the permissions, has not landed in the procedures, but in the next 3-4 years that will happen, I think.
And why do you do that? I mean, I've lived on rainwater for 2 decades,
Yeah.
and compared to any groundwater in India, any groundwater supply, which is especially because of the farmland and from seawater intrusion to pesticides and fertilizers and all the lubricants and oils, the rainwater is the purest water that Mother India gets. And if you can filter it, then drink it, because all you do is keep the leaves out, let the first flush go, and you get better drinking water than any water that you can get. And that's what, if you're targeting atmospheric catchment, is probably one step better, but otherwise rainwater should be the way we are talking about it and saying it should be used for flushing. It's like, why? You have the cleanest water, and as you said, we are living in 1% of the water catchment of the water table. Therefore, how many illegal factories and everything is entering the water table is incredible. Therefore,
and also what they pump in, about the quality.
Exactly.
I mean, it is not a one. It is on all sides wrong.
It is exactly. So we pretend that the water service is providing drinking water when in rainwater we talk of secondary use. I think we should be reversing that and saying, capture the rainwater in apartments, filter it, and give it for drinking.
Now you don't hear me saying yes.
I know,
but I'm also not saying no, because it is not easy to go. That's not that I don't believe you or something. Let's not go in. I want to approach it from another angle. Why I started studying air water was to see if you can bring air water up to a level that you can drink it. And you think it is clean, but the air is not clean. It is not
Yeah,
clean.
that's the tricky
You
part.
I mean,
You don't see it.
especially when you have actually in Auroville, it is quite okay.
Yeah.
With our forests and low density and blah, 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 blah. And we don't have big factories here,
Right.
all kind of sulfur and whatnot. I mean, in that sense, but it is not clean. Even Pondy, what we saw on the maps, comes here with all their things. So it even that air water needs treatment.
Yeah.
And it's not much. I mean, a simple filter or a simple is enough. Is
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
That I fully agree. We have also, and there I also give you completely, I'm on your line. We should also not overestimate the importance of the quality of drink water. Because if you look at quite a lot of Western countries, the water quality keeps going up and up and up and up because they get also paid on the quality of water. So every year it increases. Look, I remember, and then I come exactly on your line, that once I found a report on my desk, but say that there was Viagra in the water because it was pumped out of the Rhine, and that went all the way up to whatever, Switzerland. Yeah, and the water is drunk 28 times before it reaches the Netherlands. I mean, everybody dumps in that river whatever they find. I mean, so the samples were taken and blah 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 blah. And then there was somebody there in the laboratory, and he came screaming with his report that I found Viagra in the water. And then you look, and then you say, yeah, but look, it is only less than half a milligram in 1,000 liters. So you need to drink at least 5,000 liters per day to have an effect somewhere. Yeah, I mean, on that level is the precision. It doesn't make sense anymore. And in that sense, we have to also get a bit realistic in what is drinking water and what is not drinking water. If there are a few E. colis in the water, but you preferably don't have, it depends what kind of E. coli, but it's not so dangerous.
Right.
And there are more of those things where we have completely go bonkers in the quality of water, that if you have it in the water, there are no health effects. That we have perhaps even better than that. So there I come to you in the sense from rainwater, see where it is exactly falling, where it comes from, make now the analysis what is in it, and usually normal filters can take it already out, and then go for it. I mean, why not? And we have quite a lot of rain. It is only the problem with rainwater always the storage. I mean, we have only in the 60 days rain a year, and that is also not a cheap thing to store water. But it is possible. It is in the budget, by the way, for in the secretary's budget for 20 crores in water storage for this reason, that we can store rainwater. So but you're right. We are not that far yet. But you're right.
How do you store it? And drink it all year, or how do you?
No,
Only when it
that was the
rains?
house in Bangalore, sorry.
Yeah.
Only when it rains, you drink and rainwater, or do you store?
I was lucky to live in Bangalore with some
Yeah,
60 days of rain. So
And what do you do?
I had 30,000 liters underground.
30,000
30,000
for drinking.
See,
That's enough.
there's enough.
for a family of 4, yeah.
Can I go?
Yeah, please, sorry.
Now, before you run out of time, can we hear a bit about your, do you harvesting or what atmospheric water harvesting? Just
It's an old system. I mean, I think it might like rainwater. It has an availability of 24 hours. The technology is actually very simple, because you bring the temperature of here below dew point. That is usually 5-6 degrees. And then it starts condensing the water, and that you have to catch and treat.
So you have to cool it?
Sorry?
You have to cool the water?
You have to cool the atmosphere. Look, if we have air here, let's say it's 30 degrees, and let's say there is an 80% of humidity in this room. Yeah. When you bring here the temperature 5, 6, 7 degrees lower, it starts condensing the water. But you usually see in the morning after the night when it is cooler that everything is getting wet.
Yeah, right.
Then you catch that water. And the technology is now so far that with fans and with quite simple cooling devices, you can bring that temperature 5, 6, 7 degrees down, and in the meantime, that water is dropping into a reservoir. The machines like this, you can buy them actually everywhere, but when you want to make it as part of the water supply, you talk about another kind of scale. Now that I'm researching, but how much scale you need that it really starts having an impact. And in our community, we use about 2 cube water a day for gardening, horses, and everything, and for ourselves. And I want to gradually bring that towards atmospheric water and see if we can get the boil well quiet. And that will take a year or 2 years before, and it is actually only a matter of money.
Are you talking about the huge standing screens?
No. The machines are like this. They are not bigger than this.
Like a chair.
And, they have a big
Is
fan here, a cooling here, and the cooling works on electricity. It needs quite a lot of electricity. But most of the machines are solar powered or grid connected. So it is cooling the atmosphere 5, 6, 7 degrees lower, and then start condensing the water, and that you catch.
How and where do you put this? How and where do you install this?
You can install it anywhere you want.
Anywhere.
Anywhere.
And what if it's directly under the sun, for example?
You need your solar panels somewhere in the sun, but most of the machines are grid connected, so they take it, but they are also solar.
You can put them anywhere, as in like you can put them under the sun. Doesn't make sense.
Here outside, here on the veranda or on the backyard,
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
solar panels on the roof, and you make a pipe to your tank. That's all. And the beauty of this system is that it can work very decentral. I mean, you can have it on any building, you can put it. It works always because the technology is as simple as you can think it. It only takes a lot of power, and that's where the whole solar comes in. And what I see happening more and more, and I've already talked with Auroville Consulting about it, that you make the whole thing grid connected. But in the night, it works better than in the day because it's cooler.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to bring the temperature so far down. So basically, in the night, you draw from the TDB, and during the day, you have the solar power, and you fill the TDB again in the grid. So that is the balance of what we are looking for. It is actually very simple. And the machines, I mean, go to Marketplace or Amazon, you can buy them for 20 lakhs, and then for 1 cube, 2 cube, or 3 cube. I mean, it is really setting off this technology.
Is it supposed to be less power consuming than desalination?
No. At the moment they take more. It's a starting. I mean, it is not starting, but it is not a full proven thing yet. There are already plants which provide cities where they can do the amount what our desalination plant will do, but that's in a very experimental phase, and also on places where no other water resources are, because it's quite expensive. And when you have 3 or 4 systems, like rainwater or groundwater, you look at the quality and you look at the cost. And then you say, ooh, this is not very expensive, that we don't do, or let's first try this one and then we do this. But in an Auroville situation where the things are going down and where desalination is coming and where we have a lot of rainwater, the storage will be a problem, this can be a good third one, a second or third option, and especially on standalone places.
There are also structures.
So do you think that desalination is the best option for Auroville?
No, it is one of the options. I really hope that we save somehow the aquifers, but that is that's more a dream than a projection, because governmental kind of things have to come in to regulate things and to enforce things. Well, if you see the law, there's no problem, but we don't enforce it, and especially here when electricity is for free, when they don't need permission for the border. But I mean, it can give all kinds of reasons why we have such a wild thing about borders. So that should be regulated and enforced. Then we save. Then we have a possibility. I don't see it happening so quickly.
How do you get the government to
Talk with them. And they are willing. But look, if you go into an election and you say to all the farmers, which is half of your voting, you have to pay next year for your electricity, yeah, then you have to find another job. I mean, then it's over. The party. I mean, this kind of things where
About the making the bore wells and like you have to also kind of constrict like the accessibility for people to just like make bore wells. Like you can even bribe your person, whoever is in charge of the district, you just bribe them and like just make a thing. So that's what is kind of wrong, right?
Exactly.
And how do you get that correct? I mean, yeah, that's the Indian bureaucracy system that.
not only in
You probably
India,
don't
it's
know.
not only in India. It is only when you come out of countries where it is heavy. Look, I come out of countries that have too much regulation. I mean, you cannot move a centimeter without a governmental permission, and then they come with a big car and check everything, and I have to pay even taxes on the rotation of the pumps. I mean, it is, that's actually what nobody knows, that water is one of the most heaviest taxed elements on this planet. I mean, everybody gets better on water, but nobody has any feeling that the water itself costs nothing, but all the costs around it that goes to all kinds of parties. So it is perhaps too overregulated there, but here it is, the environmental controls are there, but they are not enforced. And I'm really praying that there are political parties standing up, that they really start enforcing just simple environmental controls. That if a factory comes there and the environmental impact assessment says the wrong things, that you stop the building of the office. I mean, these kind of things, or that you say this kind of industry we don't want, and that kind of industry is our. I mean, it is not so difficult. Even in Auroville we don't have. I mean, I see all the applications coming, and if I see sometimes the discussions with some Aurovillians, I'm not going to mention names for what they do with their wastewater, or when they have an industry, what they do with their wastewater. And then you have a big fight on the table, and they walk away and they do what they like. I mean, it is not all.
That's true, isn't it? All the big units and all they all producing, they have
It's cost.
yeah.
It's cost, and people and companies don't want cost. Okay. So it is not the solution, desalination. It is one of the solutions. Rainwater, very important. Wastewater, I said, is the most strategic one. Very important. Actually, that's the most important one. And then other solutions like air water or.
There are all these solutions, right? But how would you put?
Wait, sorry. Who is chairing here?
Go for it.
And we go by age. We start on the levels. Yeah.
Okay, well, how would you actually put these into action?
What in action?
Like any of these ideas? Because they're happening, but
Desalination.
The beauty of Auroville is that everybody is busy with something. And don't underestimate this. We can have big discussions about, I mean, but everybody is busy with something. If you see how many people in Auroville are busy with water, and I mean, it is not only aquadin, it is not only water maintenance or whatever. I think there are 50, 40 people full-time busy with water in Auroville, so it's a lot. And everybody, I was a year some kind of an advisor for Igor in the Auroville. If you see what kind of water-related studies he is doing and what kind of solutions, he brought me, by the way, to the air water because he was experimenting with it. And so, really, that's interesting. So we started talking, and yeah, this is how things go. And so this is one thing that a lot of people somehow are busy with it and start experimenting. What is not developed is that we have somebody, and that should be a part of the FMC or completely independent. Hey, that's an interesting project. Here you have money, make it bigger. That we don't have. Most countries have this, where they have a strategic way of developing an industry. And it's not that we immediately have cores, but if you give somebody a maintenance, if you give somebody just the tools what he needs, if you give somebody just access to information, and you start funding this, then you see suddenly that from the 10 ideas, 3 go up and the other 7 collapse. And then you come in the normal ratios where you have your development. So this part is not developed in Auroville, and it should be developed. Otherwise, we stay on the level of, we have quite a few pensioners here in Auroville, and actually the amount of units, we should have had 300 more.
But somehow, like, I have an auntie who works in Chennai somewhere, who kind of does these like green projects for a major company, but they kind of try to compensate for the pollution and everything that they're doing, right? And so they compensate for that and like put their money in, some green projects.
I know that this exists, yeah.
And
It's basically an old vision that when you did 20 or 25 years their environmental studies, and you say, look, a company has a product that has a price, but a company has also negative called environmental effects. How do we bring that in the price? Because it has to be cleaned and it has to be dealt with and blah, 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 blah. So the price goes 20% up, then you buy it off. And I think we should be much more strict on two levels. One, if something is polluting, don't do it. And secondly, if it pollutes, solve it. And that is not strong enough yet. But there are more things in the environment that should happen. I mean, we think that
maybe you don't get that in Auroville. You don't get funds from major companies who are trying to neutralize their carbon footprint.
Yeah, I remember that I was busy with some kind of an investment fund. That's 12 years ago, when was it? On the Rubber. But that took off. Nobody wanted to put money in it, and so that died before it started. But we need something like this.
Yeah, I wanted to know, you talked about that there is no problem actually maybe with the fish, but with the fishermen, with the desalination. But is there any study that you are mentioning?
What mentioning?
About putting back the brine in the sea. Yeah. There is studies that you look and there is no impact. There is no impact on.
No. When you look, I can give you the environmental impact study, and actually they took it a bit on the damaging side. You have a circle, half a circle of a meter, where the color was not the same as the color of the rest. But as soon as you go over the meter, it's already gone. Because the amounts what we have is in no comparison what the big ones have, and we have quite advanced technology that also makes things better. So no, there is no effect on it that I can say, and I have no reason to say something else.
No, because I mean, I don't have much of study on it, but just simply look at it that there is a big amount of salt will be on some plants, let's say any plants, when they live in a condition with some certain amount of iron, some certain amount of salt and anything, and then suddenly you double this amount.
Yeah.
This, just by looking at it, they should have some effect, negative or positive.
Now, if you look at the big desalination plant in Chennai, there are two, one in the north and one in the south, both 600 MLD. That's an environmental disaster. And I don't know how they got the permissions, but I'm not allowed to say that really.
What is that project?
Sorry?
What project? I didn't get.
There are two desalination plants in Chennai.
Yeah.
Well, the Chennai has 8-9 million people, and they didn't manage it with the long story. So they have two desalination plants. I visited them both. And what you see there is that the total effect of the brine is significant. I mean, it's huge. And I never saw studies on what exactly the effects are. And if I would be in the management of Chennai and I have also a fisherman, then I would like to know what the effect is on the coast. So the only thing what is in favor, but that is for the whole coast of India, that the current is quite strong. I mean, that always solves things, but still.
So why there is no problem in Auroville?
Because we first we have no desalination plant at the moment, and second, the amount of water that brine put out, it's nothing.
Because it's smaller. But if it goes from 2,500 supply to 50,000?
If you have a plant of 600 million liters, or you have a plant of 1 million liters, that is 600 different. I mean, that makes it pretty.
But these desalination plants, sorry.
I can hardly see in the light, so but I see hands here and there.
Maybe the person could like
Different colors.
Please ask your question. It's not about. Hello, yeah, I'm sorry, it's me. Yeah.
Who's talking?
I'm here.
Yeah, okay.
So it's again regarding this, I'm sure you're saying there are no studies in Tamil Nadu know about this brine, whether it has any toxic effect, but it does constitute 60% of the water coming in. 40% is used, 60% goes back. So that is a huge amount, and so I'm sure desalination plants are all over the world, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
are there
different,
studies
yeah.
from other parts of the world on what the effect of brine has on aquatic life?
Yeah.
And another question is it that once the water is desalinated, it still has to undergo a deep purification process before it can be consumed, or that would require another plant or something?
Yeah.
No? So is there any other
First
study?
one.
Yeah.
I have no figures. If you look at the total desalination plants on this planet, and they are growing like mushrooms everywhere, because not only India has a water shortage, especially in the Middle East, South America. I mean, they are coming up like mushrooms. And I have no idea what the effect is on the total ocean salt, but I know that why are the oceans salt? Because the water, what in rain fell, took all the salt with it from, and gradually over millions of years it got. So I don't know if there's really an effect or not. I just don't know. I know that there are areas on this planet where desalinated plants make the water completely dead. If I see some places in Saudi Arabia where it is a bit protected and where the water cannot go, not a single fish is swimming here anymore. I mean, that these are also known. It's also known. If I look back then here in our case, I don't think we will reach a level where it will be that disastrous. So that's what I think. I think it's quite okay. But you see that the technology is changing. But it is not only that we talk about it, but there are also people, engineers who are talking about it. And if we do it like this, it is less, and if we do it like this, and we can. I mean, you see already that there are storages of salt here and there. That is taken out of the water, that you don't go for the 60%, but 20% is easily evaporating. Long story, but that technology is going. Secondly, you take too much out of the water with the purification in the first step. And you don't take only the salt out, but basically you take all the minerals out. That's where the problem starts. So you have to remineralize the water again. So the amount of what is written in the World Health Organization and what India has taken over, that water should have so much magnesium, so much of sulfur, so much of this. So you have to see what that you have those values.
Or you just eat more fruits.
Okay.
Vegetables.
Yeah, this is the problem. This is the problem of desalinated water.
And it would still have to undergo further deep purification before.
Basically, we have done the purification in the membranes. They are so good these days that they take everything out what you want. I mean, it is amazing, but it takes too much out. So you have to put things back in, and that is mainly the bigger molecules and the bigger atoms. That has to go back in. So that's where the thing is. Otherwise, you have distilled water.
Yeah. I have two questions for you. One is like, are you considering solar energy as a source for your RO, seawater-based RO, the high-intensity energy consuming desalination plant?
Do I assume what?
Solar energy as a source for powering your system. Yeah. And second question is, to address most of the questions that are raised here, I have a company in the Netherlands which is called Brinies. We are working on desalination or like providing drinking water to water scarce region through desalinated water.
Yeah.
And using the, as you said, the salt or the brine solution to prepare salt. And we have a cross subsidy manner where we sell the salt back in the Netherlands or the European Union to subsidize water at a very, very affordable price. For our first plant is to be in Kenya the next year. So if there's any possible collaboration or interaction,
of course,
propose.
Of course, I know the initiative, but I didn't know the names. Because I'm still in the. But once you have been director in water in the Netherlands somewhere, you stay in that information network somehow. Right. So I get every day 1 or 2 or 3 emails of all kinds. So I knew this initiative, but I didn't know the name of it. That it was called Brinies. I think I have read about it. Yeah. But that's not recent. That must have been a year ago.
Yeah, it has been a year since we started it, and we are planning to have the first plant in Kenya. We have a small desalination plant, and solve which we.
No, we are more than willing to talk about it. I mean, if it solves, then it solves something. And so far, I have not found, also, I did not do much action. We are more in in building the plant and see if the permissions doing and the pipe laying than in all the other things what need to be done, but it's basically after. So yes, more than welcome, more than welcome.
And probably the first question was, are you considering solar energy to source your?
That question. Look, Varuna has its wind generators. So we have our own power resource. Right. We have a few windmills in Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, in Gujarat. I mean, that all gives power to the grid. Basically, we sell our energy. So the total amount of energy what we have is more or less the same as what Auroville consumes. So we set it off with each other.
Yeah.
That will the same happen with the desalination plant. But we need two more windmills to generate the energy for the desalination plant. Where they will come, I don't know, but that will be more or less the way.
I totally agree with the point, but I'm working with Auroville Consulting, so I'm pretty much aware of these the Water plants in Coimbatore and few of the plants. But more on the policy side, there are lots of constraints about the open access or transfer of energy from a different location to where you're using it. So it could be in the future that you pay more for the offset goes up.
If it's already the case.
Exactly. So in that case, in years to come in the future, having a decentralized solar energy on the site for the Auroville plant itself would be more efficient, I thought.
I think.
Probably that's something which you could.
I don't know if I want to open this whole box here, and I tell you why. If you see at wind generation, and perhaps you know that even much better than I do, that to get a wind generator going 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is already a big problem, because most of the states disconnected quite quickly when they see that their traditional power, where they get more money from, it gets priority. So that's one thing. The second thing is in the wheeling. If you see the whole banking of wheeling, if you sometimes have a lot, sometimes not so much, that does not go. That banking problem is fully there. In the past, it was possible for that you have differences and that you could bank. That is not anymore the case, or much less. Thirdly, what we see in the last 2 years, that if you want wheeling, that you need a legal participation in the power supply. So that means that Auroville needs to be owner of the windmills, and they need to be on certain locations. I mean, if you see the amount of constraints where the government has put us in with wind generation, it is hardly. We didn't think in profitability, but just to get the electricity going was already a difficult job. There's much more to say about it, but it works, but before you have all those problems there, it takes a lot of time. But yes, we want to use our power for the desalination problem. And if Auroville Consulting can help there, I would be.
It's pretty funny. I actually saw my little cousin brother was watching this video of all these wind turbines having a massive, like, kind of fail and like flying and everything, and it's like they fall in half and. Like, whoa, this is so cool. And this is actually one of the issues with these wind turbines, right? That you have to maintain them properly, or that it's pretty crazy.
But look, the TDP, they basically determine if you are connected to the grid or not. It is a completely different story than desalination.
Oh yeah, I wanted to say one more thing, like about the solar panels. Are to like majorly use solar panels, like for example, when you said at nighttime you use the wind turbines and then in the daytime you use the solar panels, that somehow sounds like a proper way to use solar panels and not for everything, because using solar panels on a big scale is actually not helpful. Because, is that a controversial topic or
no? It's not controversial. Only I didn't say you use that in the night. That I think you need somehow a grid connection. That's what I think, and that you need the grid as a kind of a reservoir for when the sun is not shining. I mean, that is basically also in Auroville what our feeling is in which direction we have to go. So we want as much solar as possible, preferably that it takes care of all the power in Auroville. But because you have only the daytime sun, that in the nighttime we use the grid, and in the daytime we fill it up in the grid. I mean, this energy can balance this out, and we're in the right way. And we are quite far already, if you see this. But windmills is a different story. It's really a different story. I see people leaving.
Maybe you and Tina are welcome to come up and have dinner. We put dinner up there for you.
We have animals we have to take care of.
Okay.
I really appreciate being invited. But we are a bit tight before we came here and after we.
Well, I don't know what to say. If you have more questions for me, even feel free to leave and leave.
Yeah, we have too many things that are pending.
I mean,
We live here 400 meters away here. So
The question, I wanted to I felt like nothing has been covered about individual efforts of preserving water at
Yes.
your own doorstep, like water adapters, thinking of dry toilets and a wet toilet where in all these new buildings which are being built, or even in communities which have spaces to have dry toilets, but it's not being talked about. So how to preserve what we already have and before we even move to all
Start.
this.
I have no idea what you ask. It's actually the most interesting point of water consumption. If you see the water footprint of products, so you go to a supermarket and you take something out of the shelf and you ask yourself, what was the water footprint of what I have in my hands? You get the shivers. How many thousands of liters have been processed, have been used to get 1 liter of whatever? So what we have, and if you make a small shift from 500 to 400 to 300, it has a gigantic effect. And that would be my advice, that we start thinking in water footprints. So when you buy something, that you ask what is the water footprint, and that you look at the products, what has the lowest water footprint. And if you really continue with this, it's an amazing step. It's amazing. Second thing is, when you buy a product, like a washing machine, look at the water consumption. When you buy a shower head, look at the water. When you buy all those devices, and there are things with 5 liters, and there are things that use only 1 liter. I mean, it makes a big difference, especially when you go to the toilet. You go to a toilet 10 times a day, and it makes a big difference if you use 10 liter or 5 liter. I mean, those two things you can start with right now. And there are a lot of other things that you can do with footprint, the water footprint. I mean, I see the last 3-4 years, a lot of studies coming in water footprints. You get pain in your stomach if you eat a kilo of meat. How much water is used to get 1 kilo of meat? It is thousands and thousands of liters.
Because of the animals?
Animal drink, animal washed, I mean, the food is processed, they are slaughtered, then it is washed. I mean, this is the whole process. I think a car takes about 20,000 liters, producing a car. It takes 20, only, and then I'm not even talking about when the steel is bought and when the rubber is bought and when you see the whole water footprint of the production process, and especially in the food processing. So when you buy potatoes or when you buy cleaned potatoes and things like this, is you have no idea how much water is used. And those people should start recycling. Now that is policy in most of the European countries, that they said in the food processing, recycle the water. So the whole water consumption goes down. So these things, we just started yet in thinking in water. What does it mean when you do something? We have hardly a feeling, hardly. But the water footprint is the most strategic one. If building a house here, I mean, if you look in building industry, there is not enough sand on this planet anymore. There's not enough cement in it. There's not enough water to make buildings. It is over with buildings on this planet. We have hardly a feeling. We think, here and there is cement and sand. But if you look at the big cities in the Middle East, how much water and how much cement and sand they've used. I mean, they took the whole world everything that was available. I mean, it is in this kind of categories that we have to start thinking. And with water, it is both. There's enough water on this planet. I mean, the seas are full, but we misuse it. Okay. Anything else?
Thank you.
I mean, we're the only ones.
Thank
eh?
you, Toby. Thank
that
you
we're
so
planning
much.
it. Anytime.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Thanks.
Anytime. It's a nice topic, water. It's really a nice topic.
Important.